Oh well, it's on to the next project. VK Commodore. It's in fairly good shape for its age. The front end was blasted prior to it landing here, which makes my life a lot easier. Still needs a few things sorting out on the front end. I'll have to assemble it all to and trial fit everything. Weld these bits in there, get the funnel sorted. It's a little bit loose at the moment, and there is bits of rust in it. Just little bits here and there. Nothing really big enough to warrant getting the welder out for. Just tap them in with a hammer and a centre punch, which also loosens up any flaking rust that's around the holes. Hit it with some rust converter as well, and put some fiberglass filler in there. The inside looks pretty clean. There was just a little patch of rust on the floor there where there was a sound deadening mat over it, so I pulled that out. It's getting the spoiler kit put on it, like the Director or whatever it was back in the day, HDT. Not the full Group C type stuff, but there's some bits and pieces on the ground out there waiting for it. So it's a fairly straight car, so hopefully there's not a great deal of bodywork to go into it. It was originally that colour green there, but it's going black all over. There's the guards for it. Everything's all pretty straight. So something to keep me amused for the next few months worth of weekends, I'm guessing. So I've got this all ready to paint now. Had to put a bit of fiberglass filler in a few of the rust holes that have gone all the way through. And then just a little bit of fine filler over some of the other pitted areas. So I'll just hit this with some etch now. Hey everyone, not too keen on doing voiceovers for many of these videos, but we'll see how it goes. I've done a lot of direct to camera stuff, but I'm not an expert with any of the sound levels, so a lot of them you might have to turn the volume up a little bit. We'll see how it goes. I'll see if I can improve things as we go along. But what I've got here is I've got some etch primer in the gun. It's a single pack etch primer, so I can just leave it in there sitting around all the time. I don't have to worry about mixing it up every time I need to go and cover a bare bit of metal. It's a wattle super etch, so it's a epoxy primer, epoxy single pack primer. I've used it for a very long time now in lots of different projects. Once you finish painting it like this, you can actually leave it sit around for 3 months before it really needs to be overcoated. If I'm not directly overcoating it, I'll generally give it a scuff back with at least a Scotch-Brite type pad or something like that before I go painting over it. Certain applications like suspension bits and pieces, I'll just use the super etch direct to bare metal and then go directly over that with a 2K satin black or something like that. So it takes all that kind of, or any top coat really. Most of the time the process with this is the super etch, then it'll be the urethane type primer, high build primer, something like that, and then over the top of that urethane I can put some fine filler. There wasn't too many places in this car, you'll see a bit later on, it's down the passenger side towards the rear that needed a fair bit of work. The gun that I'm using here is just an old suction fed gun. It's got a 1.8 tip in it, so I can use it for the undercoat like this and other primers. This undercoat comes in the can ready to use, although I generally throw a bit of general purpose thinners in it just to make it flow out a little bit better. The fans went in pretty tight here. It just helps me stop overspraying absolutely everything, so it gets it where I need to go on a small panel. On a larger panel I'll let it open up. Okay, so we're starting to get serious about working on this Commodore now that I've got a few other jobs out of the way. First thing we'll do, we'll start at the front. Got the radiator sitting there to make sure everything is lined up. And this side here is only held in by screw. I think the whole front end's been offered at some point in time. They might have had a bingle in it. All that's all loose, so I need to bolt that in. Need to weld this side in here, so because I know it's not fixed in place yet. A couple of things we've got to fill up a few holes in here that are extraneous. Tidy up someone's attempt at welding in here. Same on this side. None of it gets seen. The whole front end is blind plastic, for want of a better word. Just got to make sure that put the guards on the side, that all the guards line up, and throw the bonnet on. Generally start to get stuck into it. There's a few, I don't know how the hell that happened, but that needs to be straightened out as well. Most of the time here I'm just a one-man band, so I've always got to look at ways of getting things done by myself. Now, I've just lifted the bonnet. It's not too heavy and too difficult. Thrown an old carpet square under there to stop the stuff from sticking in the front panel. Luckily with these, it appears as though once the guards are off, it's very easy to get into the hinge mechanism, so I can just throw a couple of bolts in there on either side and be able to lift it up and get it out of the way, put the guards on and re-bolt everything else onto the front end for its trial assembly and lining everything up. So after a few minutes of adjusting, the bonnet's sitting on there now, not nice and flush. The gap's not too bad the whole way across. It's actually quite handy. The socket fits through there, straight onto the nut, straight onto the bolt head I should say, on the other side. And one up about there somewhere. There it is right there. Very handy actually, nice and easy to put on. Okay, so I've just quickly thrown this right hand side guard on. There's a little corner that wraps around there and there's a screw in there, so really that point's fixed, it can't go anywhere anyway. It doesn't line up too bad with all that in there. Just a couple of screws in place and all those holes line up okay until you get to the front. So that panel there's got to go back a ways, which I knew anyway, so that just confirmed it. So none of it welded on yet, so I'll just quickly whip that guard off and we can clamp that up and put a couple of welds on there to hold it in place. Yeah, in any project like this, there's a lot of this kind of stuff. You'll weld something up and then have to get a piece and put it back on and check it out to see if it fits, and possibly measure things and take them off again and weld a little bit more or cut a little bit more. It's what ends up eating up most of the time in a project. You got a lot of this stuff at the start, so but once it's all done, then it's down to bodywork, which also takes time, but sometimes it's a bit easier than doing all the panel fit up right at the start. Most times when you're welding on a car, it's generally into fairly thin metal, so you can't go continually welding, otherwise it just ends up in a great big ball of molten metal on the floor or on your foot, whatever's comes closest. So as you can see me here, I'm just pulsing the weld, so you let it cool for a little bit in between. Now it's not on the outside of any panel, so I'm not worried about warpage or shrinkage or anything like that, so I'm not cooling it down in between the welds. This is all structural stuff, so it's just one little dab and then you move on to another spot. Usually don't do it directly beside it. Give it a few centimeters I should say, to distance between the stitches, and then you just sort of work your way backwards and forwards and fill them all up. So and I've just left this little bit in here at slightly enhanced speed. I'd like to be able to say that I could work that fast, but in reality it doesn't really happen. So I just continue working around this joint here. I think there's about 3 different panels that come together in this location. There's the beam that runs across the top that holds the radiator in, as well as one panel that goes out to the side which holds the front of the guard, I think, or might even be just a splash shield to stop water getting up in there, and then the very front of the guard itself. So just basically have to keep working around that joint, massaging it a little bit and clamping it in places to get it all to come together, and then a little bit of grinding to flatten everything out. And the end result, I haven't ground the top bit there yet, and just touch that up a little bit down the side there with the grinder before, and all that'll get seam sealer on it before it finally gets painted. Don't know what's happened here. Looks like they tried to tow the car with it or something. Try and straighten it out a bit. Fairly substantial thickness panel, this one. Can't see it in the finished product. So So once I had the front end pretty much panel beater back into shape, I just got into it with the wire wheel there, and now just welding it up from the bottom of the crack up towards the top. There was actually a hole in the top there. I can't even remember at this stage what it was for, but there was a hole there to start with, so I didn't bother filling up the whole opening that was there. So I just welded it up and then ground it smooth. I put a little bit of filler in it at a later stage, but it gets hidden underneath all the front end and the grill, so it's not super important there. Like I said to camera, it amazes me what it was used for. It was probably used to pull the car around at some point in time, which is why it looked like it had torn through there. So anyway, that fixed up. A bit of a wire brushing now to clean it all up and move on to the next bit. Because that's behind everything, it's about as detailed as we need to get with it. I'll check once the bumper's on there, see if there's any clearance issues, but maybe just throw a quick skim of bog over that, but I don't think there's any need to. Okay, so I've got the other guard just sitting on there now, just to make sure it all lines up. The bonnet caps aren't too bad. Everything looks square. And this side's already in place, it's held in by a couple of screws and a few tack welds, so I just have to go around and weld this side out now. And that will be all it for the front end, for the welding on it anyway. Okay, so that's, as far as I can tell at the moment, all the welding that needed to be done in the engine bay. Just a couple of holes that needed. Someone put some extra screw holes through there. That's all fixed. They're attached down there. Don't need that anymore. It's fixed up a little bit. And all the sides are fully welded back on. Yeah, they would have originally just been spot welded all together, just like these ones are, but can't do that in repairs all the time, especially when you don't have a spot welder. Okay, on to the next bit. Just a quick one with this guard on now. All the gaps seem to be pretty good. Seems to line up with the door okay. Gaps down this side aren't too bad either. It lines up. So that's all good. Start looking at the bumper bar and the grill insert, because they're fiberglass and need a bit of work.